X and Y, two letters that are near the end of the English alphabet. Where am I going with this? I don't know, let's try this again. X and Y, a very iconic entry that has both fans as well as detractors. Some fans love the more experimental approach and even believe this to be one step forward, but there are others that are less generous with the reception, some calling it a downgrade in comparison to its predecessors, falling into the trappings of straying away from the known formula that made the predecessors work so well for them. X and Y is a very interesting piece to talk about because, not to be all centrist about it, but I can honestly see both points of view even if I don't necessarily agree with one or the other completely. They can give relatable explanations as to why they like or don't care for it that much. Hello everyone, Alec Elger the SideQuest Gamer here, and I personally like X and Y. It's not perfect by any means, but for me personally, it's when British alternative rock band Coldplay finally got good. And I can tell by the look on your face you were probably expecting something else, perhaps a review of the 6th entry in a certain JRPG franchise that's popular in America. Well, happy April Fool's Day, here's an album review of X and Y, not the one you were thinking of though. Coldplay is interesting. When I was a teenager, I was very picky with what kind of rock music I listened to, and while as an adult I still primarily listen to David Bowie, Queen, and the Beatles, I've been more open to different types of music because once you listen to all their albums that you wanted to listen to, you tend to venture out in search of other music. And to be honest, alternative rock from the early to mid 2000s has been something I could not only listen to, but also appreciate heavily. Like, I used to unironically believe that rock music is dead and has been taken over by auto-tune pop music that was just in one ear and out the other. And while that's the case for what genre has taken over mainstream radio, rock music is still around in some form, you just have to look harder for it. When did I become a fan of this group? Well, a member of my Discord server known as EB linked a music video by Coldplay, and that was my gateway drug. Lovers in Japan got stuck in my head, so much so that I replayed it, and then checked out the rest of that album and was amazed by the consistent quality of it. Then I discovered Milo Xyloto and worked backwards and forward in the discography since then. I liked Viva La Vida and Milo Xyloto the moment I listened to their hit singles, but X and Y, it was an acquired taste at first, not gonna lie. I know that's blasphemous because older classic Coldplay fans that were there since the beginning, they tended to like the first 3 albums and that's it. While I, as well as many others, have kind of entered from a later point and listened to the 4th and 5th albums over and over, mostly the 4th. But we eventually have to move on to other stuff. I mean, variety is the spice of life. After the success of their 2nd album, the band spent 2004 producing their 3rd album, X and Y, and even though they were shooting for a release later that year, there were many complications, which resulted them pushing it back to January 2005, which was also unmet. I mean, they did eventually get it out on June of 2005, 5 months after their target date, and it doesn't surprise me given the fact that they wrote a whopping 60 songs for their album, with most of them being discarded because they felt it didn't have the passion that they were looking for. By the time January came, they felt a lot of pressure to finish the album, and it wasn't until the song Square One where they felt able to do their songs without the pressure and great expectations placed upon them. And despite no official deadline during that time, they eventually had an official one mandated by the recording company, and that's when they finally doubled down and ended up with around 14 to 15 finished songs. Obviously only 12 as well as a hidden track were released on the album, but they spent a great deal adding some finishing touches on the songs they put on the album. So what is the takeaway? They are perfectionists, like man. 60 songs and they only picked like 12 or 13 just to put on the album. That is a lot to go through. And to be quite honest, this really shows that they wanted to be even better than before, and X and Y as an album does not disappoint. Upon release, X and Y sold very well, especially in Europe. In fact, as of 2018, it is their 2nd best-selling album in the UK behind A Rush of Blood to the Head. And as for the US, it debuted #1 on the US Billboard 200, being their first album to reach the top of that specific chart. And the reception seems mostly positive, with some loving it, while others finding it to be alright but not as good as their previous albums. And of course, there were a few unenthusiastic initial reviews saying it it confirmed their disdain towards the group, and it was a culmination of everything they hated about them. But in 2020, almost 15 years after this album's release, how does it hold up in this day and age? Well, in a sea of alternative rock music that's either good or garbage, X and Y is not only listenable, it has a timeless edge to it. It does help that the songs explore some philosophical themes that people in my generation can at least relate to, like how something in life is just missing, but it's kept intentionally vague lyrically speaking, and this accompanied with a sci-fi atmosphere the synthesizers and the distorted guitar riffs convey, as seen in Talk, Speed of Sound, Square One, and White Shadows for example. And given how I am partial to that sci-fi futuristic sound, this unsurprisingly is most definitely my cup of tea. The opening track is Square One, and it has its fans, but for a starting track, it's probably one of my lesser favorite songs on the album, if not my least favorite. To be fair, I love the keyboard effects, the drums, and especially the guitars are great, but for whatever reason, the song doesn't really stay in my head that often. Like, it's not a bad song, it's above average, but there aren't a lot of really high points for me personally, even with the chorus. Maybe it's because the lyrics don't really mean anything to me personally, or the chorus is just in one ear and out the other. I just don't feel much of anything because of that. Like, it feels ponderous, especially in comparison to the rest of the album. Now, maybe if it was just a short instrumental piece with a few of the lyrics put at the end, it would give the audience a small taste of what's to expect from the rest of the album, kind of like what they did with Life in Technicolor on their next album. Now, I'm not saying all first tracks have to be short and sweet, but this alternative would be more ideal for me personally. Regardless, the first track as it is, it's okay, maybe even mediocre, but definitely one of my lesser favorites. Now, as for the second track, it's not much of a dramatic increase in quality, but it's most definitely listenable. What If is more of a slower paced rock song. It has that backing piano you would expect from a rock song with melancholy lyrics. Like, damn, these lyrics can be pretty depressing, especially with the chorus answering the uncertainty. But I like how it ends with how the darkness always turns into the light. It's not the most lyrically deep song in their career. To be fair, with them now having 8 albums as of 2020, their earlier work is naturally going to be more primitive as compared to their more evolved work in their later albums, with a few exceptions of course. Now, the third track is where the album really starts for me. I mean, the lyrics again are like Poetry 101, the song, but the guitar riffs and keyboard synth add a more optimistic feeling for the song. The chorus is pretty decent, although qualitatively speaking, it's about the same level as the build-up, instead of a dramatic increase of quality. Regardless, this is more of what I look for in terms of a sci-fi atmosphere, even if the lyrics don't really hit me from a philosophical standpoint that later songs in the album do. But yeah, that's a really decent track. I especially love the synth-dominant outro, as it adds a sense of drama, especially when the vocals come in with the final verses. Now, the fourth track, this is one of their more popular works. In fact, it could be used as a talking point as to why the detractors don't really like the band that much. The first half, I admit, I really wasn't a fan of at first, but repeat listens have made it grow on me. While the lyrics can be interpreted as melodramatic, I think it's mostly genuine. And because Chris does a lot of falsetto throughout the song, it can be used as a metric for whether you love or hate the band in general, as detractors have this as their #1 talking point as to why they despise them.
Guys, I got an idea. How about we do a song that's not whiny bullcrap?
I'll be honest, I like the lyrics. And the voice, I don't really mind. I mean, he's no Freddie Mercury or John Anderson, but his voice works well enough given the subject matter of a lot of their songs. I've heard their work being described as emo music for people who don't like emo music, and I can kind of understand that. This song, for example, the first half is depressing and somber, and the falsetto and organ kind of convey that, but the second half kind of recontextualizes everything. Like, if the first half was just a whole song, I can understand why many wouldn't like it, but when the second half comes in, when you hear Johnny Buckland come in with his iconic guitar riffs, it's when the song really gets more optimistic and exciting, and then for the ending, it just slows back down with Chris reassuring the listener that he'll try hard to fix you. Great use of piano piano, and church organ may be a bit much, but the guitar riffs and the drums, it just all comes together beautifully in the end. I can see why it's a fan favorite, even if it's not one of mine personally. I mean, some days it might be in my top 20, if I'm in the mood for it, but there's 2 other tracks on this album alone that I think suits my taste better. Speaking of which, Talk. This song is freaking amazing. I mean, I am aware the guitar riff is borrowed from Kraftwerk's electronic song for the 80s known as Computer Love. Was it the 80s? I can't remember. But honestly, who cares? They really like the melody, so they asked permission, they got it with a simple reply of yes. It's not like they stole it and just apologized later or anything like that. And even though the Computer Love inspired guitar riffs are a great part of the song, I just love the keyboard sound effects that gives off the effect of howling wind. The drums and bass are also fantastic throughout the entirety of the song, and I really enjoy the lyrics about wanting to reach out to someone in an uncertain point of life. I will admit I don't understand the whole take a picture of something you see or climb a ladder up to the song, but maybe it's beyond my understanding of metaphors. I mean, I'm aware it's a metaphor, but I don't know what it is a metaphor of. But it does have lyrics like, I've been trying hard to reach you and I don't know what to do, and in the future, what will I be? Like, this is an actual everyday mood for a lot of people. It perfectly encapsulates social anxiety and really anxiety in general. The lyrics after the first chorus especially resonate with me. I especially love the keyboard part 3 minutes and 26 seconds in that the video frustratingly shortened as it increases the desolate mood of the song before the final chorus brings the song to a nice climax. This, as of writing, is and for a while has been my favorite song by the band. It often gets stuck in my head, especially during more solitary times of my life, where sometimes I feel like my best years are behind me and I'm too nervous to reach out to old friends. Talk about feeling like a puzzle you can't find the missing piece. The pacing of the song, where it goes from slow, then fast, then slow, then fast, then slow, that was a bit weird for me when I first listened to it, but now it's an expectation and it doesn't really ruin the song for me personally. In fact, it probably increases the impact of the chorus when it comes in. Although I should probably mention this, there's an earlier version of Talk that was leaked on the internet with different pacing, completely new lyrics, and the third chorus in the final version is heard throughout the entire piece as the main repeat chorus. The lyrics are a bit more ambiguous, but I really wish some of this stayed, like, It's also interesting to hear where the missing piece and take a picture lyrics originated from, which admittedly their usage here are just as metaphorically confusing, if not more so. One of the band's worst mistakes was not releasing this song officially, or even on a Rarities and B-Sides album like a lot of bands do. Like, it could have been released as Talk Reprise or Talk Part 2, as it is different enough to stand on its own, and it's not advertised as something different, and the pacing is a lot more consistent, but there is that bridge in the middle that I feel brings down this version lower qualitatively speaking than the final release version. But seriously, this could work as a reprise at the end of the album. Then again, they did go through 60 songs, and the fact that a version of Talk was put on the album at all is a miracle. And if it's a matter of not wanting to rehash a similar idea, release it on an EP or a deluxe version of X and Y. It definitely worked for their fourth album in Life in Technicolor when they released the EP Prospects March. I am aware that they weren't too thrilled about this rough draft being leaked out to the internet, but the fact that there's a debate as to which version is better goes to show the public does in fact care about it. And now, as for the titular song, X and Y, it's a bit of a fizzled down track in terms of quality, although I'll admit it has grown on me quite a bit. It's really decent. I do find the lyrics and vocals to be a bit ponderous, but the instrumentation is very solid for a slower tempo rock song, like the violins and the piano providing a very pleasant kind of atmosphere. And of course, Johnny Buckland's guitar work harmonizing with the vocals and the rest of the instruments is always top tier. Like, it's the kind of song you'd like to play in the background of a romantic climax in a movie or TV show, especially when it gets to the chorus. So despite it being more relaxed than the previous few tracks, it's a great way to end off the X portion of the track list. And now for the Y portion, containing tracks 7 through 12 plus a hidden track. It's honestly the weaker half of the album, but it still maintains that consistent quality seen in the first half, so it never feels uneven. I mean, Speed of Sound was one of the bigger hit singles from the album, and like Talk and The Hardest Part, got a music video. And oddly, despite diehard fans putting this among their favorite song lists, critics were a lot more brutal, with some even calling it a lesser ripoff of their better known hit Clocks from their second album. But I failed to see that, to be honest. I mean, I do think Clocks is way better than this song, but the repeated piano riff is a lot simpler compositionally speaking. The lyrics are quite different as well. They don't even recycle any of Clocks' themes or subject matter. Only thing that's remotely similar is that it has a piano, and metaphorically speaking, it's confusing as all hell. But that's about it. Just because it has a piano riff that repeats throughout doesn't mean they're trying to make a sequel to Clocks. I do like the backing synthesizer throughout the song being consistent with the album's sci-fi atmosphere, as well as the choir sound effect, but to be honest, this song is alright, but it's probably somewhere in my bottom 3 for this album. It just doesn't do a whole lot for me, and the chorus is kind of in one ear and out the other, and some of the band members have soured their opinion on this song over the years, it seems, although for completely different reasons, at least according to Chris Martin. What the fuck is a banana lyric? Now, track 8, A Message. I'm usually not a fan of acoustic-only pieces with meandering lyrics, like, I've heard a lot of that throughout the years, especially from sidewalk musicians you see on college campuses. But I like how it starts out that way and then more instruments fade in, especially 78 seconds in when the guitar and faint synthesizer harmonize with Chris's vocals and the acoustic guitar, and the chorus just elevates the quality of the song, especially the electric guitar riff that comes in with Martin's vocals coming back in, bringing this song to an epic close. While it's not my all-time favorite song by the band, this is honestly what I would consider to be one of their more underrated works. It's probably my 5th favorite song from this album, if not higher. As for the 9th track, Low, it's pretty decent. It has a faster tempo with some decent guitar riffs and drums here and there. I definitely like the bass guitar performance. The vocals and lyrics are fine as well. It's about as standards of a rock song you could get, but it's not a song I would play for those who never heard of the band, unlike this next one. Now this may or may not be an unpopular opinion, but to be honest, this is probably my 2nd favorite track in the entire album. The Hardest Part. This song, I love the lyrics as it's a lot more straightforward. It's a breakup song that may not sound like it at first, but it's very relatable to a lot of people. I just love the piano, the rhythm guitar, and especially those hard guitar riffs that just convey a sense of anger, and that epic guitar solo 3 minutes in just concludes the piece with the most anger. And honestly, this performance is one of my favorites of Johnny Buckland's entire career. Something about it just conveys frustration and enhances the mood of sadness conveyed in the song, especially in harmony with Chris's concluding vocals. It's definitely not a song for everyone, but I find it really enjoyable. Now this is emo music for people who don't like emo music, except I don't mean that at all in a negative way. And man, this song is so good, the remaining tracks arguably don't follow it up, but in a vacuum they're quite fine. Like, Swallowed by the Sea has decent lyrics even if the vocals can be a bit repetitive, but the instrumental build-up from synthesizer to later being joined by an amazing rhythm guitar, bass guitar, and drums halfway through makes it another enjoyable listen. It's a pretty good song and is up there with A Message qualitatively speaking, and might even be better in some aspects, but worse in terms of having repeated vocal composition. Now, for the final track, Twisted Logic. Well, okay, it's not the true final track, but on the album it was originally listed as such until the hidden track got a bit more famous, and now downloadable versions of the album have it listed as a separate track. But enough about Kingdom Come, let's go back to Twisted Logic. I didn't really know what to expect from the first 38 seconds with a light rhythm guitar and violins in the background, as the lyrics and vocals were kind of meandering, but 39 seconds forward, you hear what's building up to when the electric guitar and bass becomes more pronounced, and the rest of the track keeps the slower tempo, but the guitar and drums just make this track for me. Don't get me wrong, the lyrics are still in that metaphorical, cryptic style consistent with the rest of the album, but the vocal performance is quite good, especially in the chorus, and all that in the last chorus where the vocals, guitar, drums, and bass all come together, it's just so damn good. That is how you end an album, theoretically, if it wasn't for the hidden track mentioned before. Till Kingdom Come, this gives me like Amazing Spider-Man flashbacks where it was played in that one scene where he's skateboarding around. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, I like Amazing Spider-Man. It's not perfect, in fact it's above average at best. And it's not really a good adaptation of the Spider-Man comics, at least the main 616 universe stories. Although it's kind of like a loose adaptation of the Ultimate Spider-Man comics where he was kind of similar to the Andrew Garfield portrayal, but I'm just getting ahead of myself. How is this song? It is pretty damn good, I will say that much. I like the fast strumming of the acoustic guitar, I like the vocals, and the lyrics aren't that difficult to follow. It's very uplifting and even philosophical at times, and it feels complete enough as its own song that I don't know why it's a hidden track originally. Is there some kind of contract mandating you can only have 12 tracks on a single album? Or is it just some type of artistic statement? Like they did this on their song Yes with the hidden track Chinese Sleep Chant, but that was more understandable. It's lyrically simple and feels like part of a song rather than a complete one on its own. I mean, at least on YouTube they released Till Kingdom Come on its own track. It just makes it annoying because if you're listening to it on CD, you have to fast forward to that point if you just want to hear that hidden track as opposed to skipping to it. Regardless, Twisted Logic and Kingdom Come are both great ending points for the album, and even though I found the Y portion to be weaker than the X portion, Y still stands pretty strong with X, and I can't listen to one part of the album without the other. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised if some fans prefer the Y part for A Message, Twisted Logic, the hardest part, and Till Kingdom Come. With that being said, I used to think this album was just decent. In fact, it was probably one of my lesser favorites for the longest time. But actually sitting down and listening to the lesser known tracks as well as the singles, my impressions of it have overall improved, I think more positively of the album. I mean, sure, a few of the okay tracks bring it down from greatness to just being pretty good. But just like listening to it, I think it's an improvement over the previous efforts. I know A Rush of Blood to the Head has this devout fan base, and they might put my head on a stake for a dare saying anything from that band was better than that second album, but I honestly feel that X and Y gives me more of what I want from an alternative rock band. It is easily my third favorite album by Coldplay. I mean, it's no Viva La Vida, then again, nothing is. That fourth album was their lightning in a bottle. But X and Y, I'm surprised some call it a downgrade from their first two albums, Parachutes and A Rush of Blood to the Head. Like, I could understand A Rush of Blood to the Head being more preferable, but Parachutes I found to be quite boring and still my least favorite album by them. Whew. I know all this blasphemy I'm spouting out in one video might just get me excommunicated from the Church of Chris Martin. But to be fair, a lot of my favorite bands, David Bowie, Led Zeppelin, The Beatles, I wasn't a really big fan of their first albums either, so it makes sense because theoretically speaking, you would want your band to make better and better content than the last, so regardless, X and Y is a functional product despite some fans not being as into it as other entries. I personally never left the experience miserable or unsatisfied. Some parts are better than others, don't get me wrong, but several years later after its release, I have a feeling more and more people will give it a chance. Now Pokemon X and Y, on the other hand, I hear it's amazing when the famous purple stuffed worm in Flapjaw Space with a tuning fork does a raw blink on Harry Carey Rock. I need scissors, 61. Thank you all so much for watching this April Fool's product.
I caught you. You actually listen to Coldplay?
No, I don't actually listen to them. It's just for an April Fool's video. Yeah, no. I'm like a full metalhead, bro. You know, bang your head, rock fingers and shit. I'm all about that hard rock.
Oh man, you actually fooled me for a second. I actually thought you unironically liked that band. That's a good one, SideQuest Gamer.
Yeah, I can't believe you fell for it either. You must be so embarrassed right now.
Now I gotta go. Nerdle's waiting for me. We have to do another season of this show. Somebody rebooted us, man. Can you believe it?
Yep. I'm glad we cleared it up. Yeah, I'm not a fan of the band at all. Anyways, with that out of the way, I'm so glad I finally made this video and released it. I was a little disappointed in myself with the April Fool's video last year. I just pretty much did the gnome meme, which was so effortless. I felt so guilty that I had to re-upload the Nerdle and the Dude Seasons 1 and 2 videos because everybody wanted to see that, and I'm done hiding from the past. We all know I was a cringy bastard when I was younger. I still am. And I've got nothing to hide. I made a disclaimer, so I think everything should be explained perfectly. And I hope you like this album review video. I'm very inexperienced. Don't worry, I will stick with what I know from here on out, gaming, and maybe even a few TV shows if I actually get around to that. You might just see that next April with my Justice for All retrospective.